Hey everyone, it's Alex, and I am finally here with my video for the Winners and Ceremony review of the 89th Academy Awards. Now, as I explained in my Razzie video, the reason why it took me so long to make this was that I had needed a break from making videos after the Oscars because I had been making so many up to that point that I was just getting tired from the whole process of filming and editing and uploading. And then as I was taking my break, I just got busy with work and life, and I just never found the right time to sit down and make these videos. But now I have. So, the 89th Academy Awards. It certainly has become one of the more memorable and infamous Academy Awards in recent history, and of all time. Before I reveal the winners and give my thoughts on the winners and the ceremony, I'd like to take the time to address the big elephant in the room regarding the ceremony, and that is, of course, the infamous Best Picture mix-up. By now, anyone who watched the Oscars, or at least heard the news about this, will have heard what happened. Best Picture is always the very last category presented at the Academy Awards, and for good reason, since it's the biggest award of the night. And usually they always get someone big or legendary to present the award. And this year they had Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty, which was a good choice because this year marked the 50th anniversary of their film Bonnie and Clyde, a film that was very groundbreaking when it first came out and kind of forever changed the way that things could be portrayed in film, like violence, for example. And everything seemed fine and dandy. They announced the nominees. Warren Beatty opened the envelope. He was pausing, and it looked like at first he was just pausing for dramatic effect, and then Faye Dunaway looked at the card and said La La Land. And so, everything seems fine. There's applause. They're going up on stage. The producers are making their acceptance speech. And then, unbeknownst to everyone who was watching TV, there was a commotion going on in the back. And it turns out there was a mistake. Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty had been given the wrong envelope. They did not get the envelope that said Best Picture. Instead, what they got was an envelope saying Best Actress, and the card inside said Emma Stone, La La Land. Now, earlier in the ceremony, the Best Actress category had been presented by Leonardo DiCaprio, and Emma Stone was indeed the winner for La La Land. So you might be wondering, well, how did they get the Best Actress envelope? Well, the accountants who give out the envelopes to the presenters always make 2 copies of each envelope for security purposes, so that way, in case one group of envelopes should get stolen, they'll have a spare set of envelopes on hand for the presenters. And usually the accountant doesn't give the presenter the envelope until right before he or she goes on stage. So anyway, back to the mix-up. As this was happening, the accountants, having realized their mistake, were scrambling to get the right envelope, and they came back and whispered in the La La Land producer's ears, and he announced, "There's been a mistake. Moonlight, you won Best Picture." And he had to hold the card up to the camera that clearly said Moonlight Best Picture to prove that he wasn't joking. And then, of course, the Moonlight crew came up and gave their acceptance speech, and while it was a touching moment of grace and humility, it was still a very awkward experience, not only for those in the theater and those watching, but I can't imagine how awkward it was for both the producing teams of La La Land and Moonlight. And how this mix-up happened in the first place was that the accountant who had given Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty the envelope, he made a mistake because he had been tweeting a photo of Emma Stone walking backstage to the press room with her Oscar in her envelope, and because he was so busy tweeting, he irresponsibly didn't check the envelope he was giving them and gave them the wrong envelope. So that's how this whole mistake happened, because of one accountant's stupidity. And even though the other accountant didn't make the mistake, she's had to pay the price for it too. And as a result, the Academy has banned both of these accountants from all future Oscar ceremonies forever. They're never coming back. And usually they have 2 accountants who handle the envelopes. Now they'll have 3, because in the future, all Oscar ceremonies will not only have the 2 accountants, but the third one who will be on hand to try and correct things much more quickly if another mistake like this should happen. Now, this is not the first time an envelope mix-up happened at the Oscars. At the 1964 ceremony, Sammy Davis Jr. was given the wrong envelope when he was presenting Best Adapted Score, and they gave him Best Original Score instead, because they had two score categories back in that day when musicals were much more common. But even though that was an embarrassing mix-up, that still wasn't as embarrassing given the fact that it was for a music category and not for Best Picture. Given the fact that this happened on live television and the fact that nobody saw it coming, it's a miracle that the situation was handled as well as it was, with the producers being graceful and humble, and Jimmy Kimmel doing his best to try and throw some jokes out there. I know some people didn't like his jokes, but you know, he at least tried, in my opinion, because when you have a situation like that, you got to try and make it as less awkward as possible. And hopefully this kind of situation will never ever happen again, because while this was technically an accident, the fact that it happened on the biggest awards stage of all, the Academy Awards, that is quite embarrassing and humiliating, and this is going to go down as one of the infamous moments ever in Oscar history. Like, top 5, top 10, like every list of top 10 infamous Oscar moments will have this moment on there. Trust me on that. Alright, now that I've explained that situation, let's get on to the actual winners and ceremony review. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to announce all the winners, and then I'm going to go back and tell you which ones I agree with and which ones I don't. So here are the winners for the 89th Academy Awards. Best Art Direction, La La Land, production design by David Wasco, set decoration by Sandy Reynolds Wasco. Best Cinematography, Linus Sandgren, La La Land. Best Costume Design, Colleen Atwood, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Best Film Editing, John Gilbert, Hacksaw Ridge. Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Alessandro Bertolazzi, Giorgio Gregorini, and Christopher Nelson, Suicide Squad. Best Original Score, Justin Hurwitz, La La Land. Best Original Song, City of Stars from La La Land, music by Justin Hurwitz, lyrics by Benj Pasek and Justin Paul. Best Sound Editing, Sylvain Belmer, Arrival. Best Sound Mixing, Kevin O'Connell, Andy Wright, Robert McKenzie, and Peter Grace, Hacksaw Ridge. Best Visual Effects, Robert Legato, Adam Valdez, Andrew R. Jones, and Dan Lemon, The Jungle Book. Best Animated Short Film, Piper, Alan Barilaro and Mark Sondheimer. Best Live Action Short Film, Sing, Christoph Dieck and Anna Udvardy. Best Documentary Short Subject, The White Helmets, Orlando von Einsiedel and Joanna Nada-Segara. Best Documentary Feature, O.J. Made in America, Ezra Edelman and Caroline Waterlow. Best Foreign Language Film, The Salesman from Iran, directed by Asghar Farhadi. Best Animated Feature, Zootopia, Byron Howard, Rich Moore, and Clark Spencer. Best Original Screenplay, Kenneth Lonergan, Manchester by the Sea. Best Adapted Screenplay, Barry Jenkins and Terrell Alvin McCraney, Moonlight, based on the play In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue by Terrell Alvin McCraney. Best Supporting Actor, Mahershala Ali, Moonlight. Best Supporting Actress, Viola Davis, Fences. Best Actor, Casey Affleck, Manchester by the Sea. Best Actress, Emma Stone, La La Land. Best Director, Damien Chazelle, La La Land. Best Picture, Moonlight, Adele Romansky, Dee Dee Gardner, and Jeremy Kleiner, producers. Best Art Direction, La La Land is a very good winner. Personally, I wanted Hail Caesar to win just because I admired how they recreated 1950s movie sets, but I'm not that upset about La La Land winning. Best cinematography, La La Land absolutely deserved to win that. Best costume design. This was a surprise because hardly anybody was predicting Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them to win here. However, Colleen Atwood is a very popular costume designer with the Oscars. This is her 4th Oscar win. I know she previously won for Chicago, Memoirs of a Geisha, and Alice in Wonderland, and she's been nominated, I think, at least 10 more times for other films. And this marks the very first time a film in the Harry Potter universe has won an Oscar. Several of the previous Harry Potter films were nominated for Oscars but never won them. Now, technically, Harry Potter is not a character in this film because this is set decades before he was born, but it's still considered part of the Harry Potter universe because it's set within that world. But personally, I thought Jackie was the more deserving winner because of just how they brilliantly recreated many of Jacqueline Kennedy's iconic outfits for Natalie Portman to wear, because she just became Jacqueline Kennedy in that movie. I never felt like I was watching somebody play her. It felt like I was watching the real person. Best film editing. This was another surprise. Most people thought La La Land would win this because usually the Best Picture frontrunner tends to win the Best Film Editing award, but so I personally thought La La Land should have won, but Hacksaw Ridge did have some good editing, particularly in the war scenes. For Best Makeup and Hairstyling, this is my least favorite winner of this year's Oscars because while the makeup was good in Suicide Squad, it didn't really feel as deserving of this award as Star Trek Beyond. Now, Suicide Squad did have some impressive work, mainly with the Joker and with the prosthetics of Killer Croc, but other than that, quite a lot of the makeup was just tattoos on people. Now, I understand they probably took a long time to apply each day, but still, tattoos don't compare to like the full-on prosthetic makeup in Star Trek Beyond that makes actors like Idris Elba and Sofia Boutella look completely unrecognizable. Of course, for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, it shouldn't be the amount of makeup that determines who should win, but the best looking makeup. And even though Star Trek Beyond did have the most amount of makeup on the actors, it still looked the best in my opinion. And also, like I said in my video for the Oscar nominations, it's ridiculous that the Best Makeup category still only has 3 nominees, yet every other category, including all the short films, have 5. So, starting next year, I really would like to see Best Makeup and Hairstyling expand to 5 nominees, because there were many contenders that could have been nominated this year that were completely shut out. For Best Original Score, this was La La Land was going to win this. Everyone knew that, and thankfully it did because it truly deserved to. The best score of 2016 for Best Original Song. A lot of people I know agreed La La Land deserved to win, but many of them are torn on whether or not Audition the Fools Who Dream or City of Stars was the better song. Personally, I thought City of Stars was better, and I'm glad it won, although Audition the Fools Who Dream is a great song too. But there's just something about City of Stars that just literally makes me listen to it over and over and over again, which I feel is what a Best Original Song winner should do, and this one certainly does. Best Sound Editing. Arrival was a surprise winner here because most people thought this would go to Hacksaw Ridge, which I personally would have voted for if I were a member of the Academy, but Arrival did create some great alien sounds in the movie. And Best Sound Mixing, this again was another surprise because many people thought La La Land would win this because usually films that are musicals or portray the life of musicians tend to win this award, like Ray, Dreamgirls, Les Miserables. So many people, including myself, thought it would follow in that pattern. But no, this one actually went to Hacksaw Ridge, and I would have voted for La La Land to win this one, but you know, recreating a war battle is never easy, so I guess Hacksaw Ridge would have been a good 2nd or 3rd place pick in my opinion. Because this year, there weren't, other than Suicide Squad, there weren't really any winners that made me feel angry. Not all of them are ones I personally would have picked, but I don't find myself being angry that they won. For Best Visual Effects, The Jungle Book easily deserved to win this. I know some people were rooting for films like Doctor Strange or even Kubo and the Two Strings to win, but you know, The Jungle Book just did such a magnificent job of recreating an entire jungle through CGI and not making it look fake. And that is impressive. For Best Animated Short Film, I'm so glad Piper won. Many of these short films were really good, and I actually saw them. But Piper was just very adorable, and it was just so heartwarming, and I'm very glad it won. For Best Live Action Short Film, Silent Nights would have been my personal choice to win, and these were all really good, but Sing is a decent winner, I guess. It features an interesting last few minutes, I'll say that, without spoiling it, in which kids get some great revenge on a mean teacher. For Best Documentary Short Subject, all excellent nominees, you know, dealing with many serious issues in our world, particularly violence in the Middle East and the ongoing refugee crisis. Personally, I would have picked 4.1 Miles, but The White Helmets would have been probably my second choice. And the two filmmakers who made The White Helmets, Orlando von Einsiedel and Joanna Nada-Segarra, they made an excellent full-length documentary a few years ago called Virunga, which was nominated at the Oscars for Best Documentary but lost to Citizen4. If you haven't seen Virunga, go watch it. I know it was released straight to Netflix, so it still might be there. So if it is, go check it out. If not, maybe you can rent it off iTunes or your local library, or buy it on Amazon if it's available on DVD. For Best Documentary Feature, O.J. Made in America. I watched like all 8 hours of this in one day, not like all at once. I had to take a couple of breaks for dinner and, you know, doing housework and things like that, but it was so fascinating to watch that I could not stop after watching one part. And it was a good thing that this film won while it did, because it technically aired as like a 5-part miniseries on ESPN, but it received a small theatrical release to make it eligible for the Oscars. But now, starting next year, miniseries will no longer be able to do that, because some people feel it makes the competition unfair for miniseries to compete as full-length movies. But, you know, O.J. Made in America, if you watch it back to back, all the episodes, it really does feel like one long movie. O.J. Made in America is not just a great look at O.J. Simpson and his infamous murder trial, but it's also a great look at racism, police brutality, and it not only shows how all of that led to O.J. Simpson being acquitted of murder, but how everything also resulted in him being put in prison about a decade and a half later, where he still is right now. Best Foreign Language Film. Now, this was one of the probably the most controversial, because there's a debate on whether or not The Salesman won purely for political purposes, because it's from Iran, and so is its director, and right after the Oscar nominations came out, Donald Trump issued the Muslim travel ban against Muslims from several countries, including Iran, and the director, as a result, decided not to attend the Oscar ceremony as a form of protest. But I've heard great things about The Salesman. It has like a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, and since I haven't seen it, I can't comment on whether or not it truly deserved to win. So I'm willing to bet some voters were a mix of both. Some maybe voted purely for politics, others for quality, but I can't judge a voter properly if I don't know why they voted for it. Best Animated Feature. I'm very happy for Zootopia winning. Some people I know were probably rooting for like Kubo and the Two Strings, but there were many great nominees here, and Zootopia, I think, was a great film, not just because it was entertaining for people of all ages, but it was willing to tackle some very serious themes that most family-friendly films would never dare try to tackle, just because they're very serious subject matters. But Zootopia, I think, did a brilliant job at showcasing racism, sexism, bigotry, and lots of other serious issues, and while still being an entertaining film, and bravo to it for that. Best Original Screenplay, very well deserved for Kenneth Lonergan. Best Adapted Screenplay, very well deserved for Moonlight. Best Supporting Actor, Mahershala Ali, very well deserved for Moonlight. Best Supporting Actress, Viola Davis for Fences, absolutely well deserved. Just watching that film, you knew she was going to win an Oscar, and she deserved to, and I'm so happy she has one. She's one of my favorite actresses working today. Best Actor. Now, some people will be happy about this, others won't. Casey Affleck was my pick to win Best Actor when I first saw Manchester by the Sea, but then after seeing Fences, I started shifting towards Denzel Washington just because of the power he put into his performance. And Best Actress, personally I would have liked to see Natalie Portman win for Jackie, but Emma Stone would have been my second choice. Best Director, Damien Chazelle, 100% deserved it for La La Land. And Best Picture, Moonlight was my second best film of the year, La La Land was my first. And since they have to rank Best Picture, when it comes to voting for that, I would have put La La Land at number 1 and Moonlight at number 2. But unlike, say, the year Crash won over Brokeback Mountain, I'm not upset about this because Moonlight is one of those films that I think will be studied by a wide group of audiences over the next few decades for many different reasons. And it's one of those films where even if it wasn't your personal pick to win, you can still respect it winning because it was such an amazing film that really stood out in a year where there were hundreds of films. I mean, I saw over 100 films last year, and it was my number 2. So those are my thoughts on the winners. Now on the show itself. In spite of the Best Picture snafu, I really enjoyed the show this year. I thought Jimmy Kimmel was a really great host. I thought most of his jokes were really funny. I like how he dropped candy from the ceiling in those little parachutes. I'm sure some people probably thought he was just ripping off Ellen DeGeneres ordering pizza for the audience when she hosted the Oscars, but I thought it worked. I mean, if I were in that room and candy floated down from the ceiling, I would be like, oh, heck yes, I want that candy. And I know some people didn't like the fact that there were a lot of political jokes, and I know some people are sick and tired of political jokes at award shows given what's happened in the past year, but I personally don't mind them if they're done right, and I think for the most part they were done right. And I thought Jimmy Kimmel sending Donald Trump a tweet in the middle of the ceremony was really funny. Ooh, will he actually respond back? He didn't, but it was just fun to see. I mean, I thought he kept the show moving along at a nice pace. Yeah, and considering that Jimmy Kimmel was a first-time host, I thought he knocked it out of the park for the most part. And if he's asked to host again, I honestly wouldn't mind. I thought most of the presenters were really good. I liked how a couple of times they had some celebrities presenting with some of their great idols, like Charlize Theron presenting with Shirley MacLaine, Seth Rogen presenting with Michael J. Fox, and Javier Bardem presenting with Meryl Streep. I thought the Best Original Song performances were really good. So I'm sure some people were probably disappointed that Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone weren't singing City of Stars and Audition the Fools Who Dream on the Oscar stage, but I thought John Legend did a fine job singing them. The In Memoriam was nice, except for the big snafu where they used the wrong picture for costume designer Janet Patterson. Instead of putting her picture, they used the picture of a woman who's still alive, a producer named Jan Chapman. And needless to say, she was very upset about that, and I don't blame her. Those In Memoriam people, I hope, are fired from next year's ceremony because while the names Jan and Janet are very familiar sounding, and while Janet Patterson and Jan Chapman did frequently work together on several movies, I don't understand how you would mix up their pictures because I've seen pictures of both of them, and they didn't look like they were twins. They looked pretty different. And as for the speeches of the winners, I thought they were all really good. If I had to pick a top 5, I guess I'd put at number 5 Barry Jenkins and Terrell Alvin McCraney. At number 4, Mahershala Ali. At number 3, Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, who were the songwriters for City of Stars from La La Land. At number 2, Emma Stone. And at number 1, and I'm sure most people will probably agree with me on this, because this is one of those Oscar speeches that you'll just remember for years after watching it, and it will probably be ranked among the greatest Oscar speeches of all time, Viola Davis. Viola Davis. Oh my God, her speech was one of the best award show speeches I have ever seen. And I've seen Viola Davis make many great speeches at award shows over the years. She just has this natural gift of making these great speeches. And just this speech was easily the best speech she has ever done, and one of the best award speeches I have ever seen at any award show, and I've watched many in my life. And, you know, and I just say, if you haven't seen her speech yet, go look it up, because I guarantee you, you will be moved by it. Well, that's all I have to say about the 89th Academy Awards. Hopefully, despite the Best Picture snafu, you guys enjoyed the ceremony too, if you watched it. But please let me know in the comment section below what you thought of the ceremony and the winners. Please subscribe to my channel so you can get my new videos as soon as they're uploaded. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!